I'm warning you now. There's going to be a lot of references to old school Hollywood and mid-century Hollywood coming at you in this video. First off, Mickey Mouse shirt. Last week was actually Mickey Mouse's, I believe it is 94th birthday, because that is, well, him and Minnie, because they both premiered in Steamboat Willie, which came out in 1938, 1928, excuse me, 1928. So yeah, Mickey Mouse is going to be 100 years old in the next couple of years. And just look at how far the Walt Disney Company has come. And so, hence, Mickey Mouse shirt. Also, this video, as you can tell by the thumbnail and the title, is going to be about Buggy the Clown, but it is going to be in comparison to a song that is called Be a Clown by Cole Porter. Cole Porter was a kind of very early, like 1920s into the 40s, 50s, and 60s composer. He wrote different songs, and he wrote different musicals for A, Broadway, and then B, wrote a lot of songs for Metro Golden Mare, so MGM and stuff like that. So their songs that he's done, and I love so many of them. If you want a really good, and I'm going to reference it in this video, if you want a really good thing that'll show you a good amount of Cole Porter's songs, look up a movie called The Lovely, starring Kevin Kline. It's a movie that is based off of Cole Porter's life. And within the movie, the songs that they use in the movie are songs that Cole Porter wrote for many of his different musicals. If you want a list of some of the musicals he did the songs for The Pirate, which is where this main song that I'm going to talk about comes from, which came out in 1948, which I'm not really referencing that one too much. I'm more going to reference the song version of it that they use in The Lovely itself. And he did like Kiss Me Kate and Paris, a musical, and so many other musicals. He was also a contemporary of Irving Berlin. They were actually friends. And the song that I'm going to talk about, Be a Clown, is actually also kind of an homage / very similar song to the song Make 'Em Laugh that is in Singin' in the Rain, which, if you've ever seen Singing in the Rain, starring the late, great Debbie Reynolds and Gene Kelly and several others, the song is about, well, you may not necessarily be super good at, like, acting, but as long as you can make people laugh, you're going to be fine, which is basically the same premise of both of the songs for Be a Clown and Make 'Em Laugh. And with everything that happened with Buggy, I composed this video several weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, back when we got the news about the Cross Guild and everything with Buggy and Crocodile and Mihawk and everything, and now I'm just getting to the point where I actually can film it, because I was waiting for like a bye week for the manga, and then I was just like, well, I'll just do it around Thanksgiving, and it'll just be a funny video that can go up around Thanksgiving. So that's what this one's going to be. And if you want to look up the link for the Make 'Em Laugh, or not Make 'Em Laugh, well, go ahead and watch Make 'Em Laugh. That's also funny. For the Be a Clown version that's in The Lovely, starring Kevin Kline, where he actually sings it. You can look that up. I'm going to leave the link in the description. If you want to look up the lyrics for the song, which I'm going to be referencing the lyrics a lot in this video, they're just really kind of funny. There's, act the fool, play the calf, and you'll always have the last laugh. Wear a cap in the bells, and you'll rate with all the great swells. Those are just like some of the opening lines to it. And it's just basically this whole thing where it's just like Cole Porter, or the character that sings it in one of the movies that it's from, just talking about like, well, as long as you can make people laugh, you're going to be fine. Which I'm sitting there going, because I just listen to the soundtrack randomly at times, because I really like the soundtrack. And it's filled with a lot, like Sheryl Crow is on this soundtrack, Natalie Cole is on this soundtrack, John Bowerman. For anyone that's Torchwood and Doctor Who fans, he's on the soundtrack. By the way, look up John Bowerman singing. He's amazing. You know, there's so many different great songs on the soundtrack itself. So just look those up anyway because they're just really fun. And so I just advise that in general. But so many of the songs, you know, I listen to Be a Clown, and I'm just like, well, a lot of that kind of applies to Buggy. So let's do a Buggy video. A little bit later than I intended, but you know, I got it. I've got it out now. This one is called Be a Buggy the Clown. You know, what can I say? I ran with the title. So basic facts about, you know, Buggy the Clown, Buggy the Star Clown, Buggy the Genius Jester, you know, whatever you want to go with for however variation you want to go with for him for his description. He is, of course, 39 years old, and his bounty has gone from initially way back in the beginning of the series was 16 million berries, which, you know, for the East Blue was respectable, I guess. And then he goes off and he chases Luffy, and I'm going to go into some of that stuff too. Then, of course, at the current moment in the story, he is now a Yonko. And as people state, Buggy has the ability to spectacularly fail up. Well, he did a horrible job. Give him a raise. And his current bounty is 3,189,000,000 berries. He, of course, has the Barabara no Mi, the Chop Chop fruit. He's the captain of the Buggy Pirates. He had his alliance with Alvida. He was, of course, a member of the Roger Pirates, of course, apprenticing with Shanks and everything. And with Film Red, we learned a whole bunch about Shanks recently. Don't exactly know where Buggy ties into some of that stuff beyond, you know, he was Shanks' best friend, of course. Buggy was, you know, became a warlord of the sea after, you know, during the time skip and everything. He, you know, he had Buggy's delivery service. Now he's a Yonko with the Cross Guild, and he's the public leader of the Cross Guild, even though those of us that are readers and those that are high enough in Buggy's crew know that, no, Crocodile and Mihawk are the ones calling the shots. Buggy's the idiot that is now supposedly in charge, hence failing up. And I'm not going to go over every single detail of Buggy's life. I wanted to go over the things that made me think about the lyrics in the song, just because they're really funny. Lyrics in the song or just references, and I'm just like, well, I mean, there's a possibility Oda knows about the song Be a Clown, but I don't know if it would be something that he would be able to replicate specifically with Buggy. I don't know if that's in Oda's repertoire or anything like that. I'm not saying that he couldn't. If he wanted to, I'm sure he could, but I don't know if he knows about the song. Since the movie that it's from, The Pirate, ha 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 ha, I don't know exactly how popular that would have been in Japan, considering that it would have come out, well, a little ways after World War II, so I guess it's a possibility Oda's seen it, but I don't know. If that ever is revealed that he knows about the song and everything, and, you know, ever makes a reference to Buggy with the song, that would be funny, but, and that would pay off for this video, but I don't think that's going to happen. But, you know, we see things about Buggy's life with just, like, how much of a fool he makes of himself, and yet he consistently seems to fail upwards for the most part. And I am going to put on times where Buggy has actually demonstrated a form of actually his own strength or showing off his own skill. We know that during, of course, the time when he's growing up on the Roger Pirates and everything, some point in time, you know, he was either found by the Roger Pirates or just taken in by them. One of the two, we don't know. We know that he's from, I believe it is Buggy is from the Grand Line, but we don't know exactly where on the Grand Line. We know that he was raised on the Roger Pirate ship by Rogers and Rayleigh and Scopper and the rest of the crew that were there at the time, pre-Odin and pre-Crocus, obviously, but raised by them and everything alongside Shanks, and Shanks and him were, you know, best friends, brothers, whatever you want to go with. And then, of course, at some point in that time frame, we know that Buggy, of course, got his hands on the Barabara no Mi when the Roger Pirates found the fruit. And, you know, he ate the fake version, and then he ended up swallowing the real one because Shanks scared him, which is just a funny thing that happens in general, because why Buggy swallowed an entire pineapple is left up for debate. So, yeah. Of course, we know that since then, Buggy has had this vendetta against Shanks and everything, but even in that time frame, they're still friends. I don't know if we ever get an exact answer as to, like, when he ate the devil fruit in comparison to, like, when the Roger Pirates split up. I don't remember if we ever get an exact answer on that. We know that later on, at one point in time, they, of course, fought against Golden Lion Shiki at the during the Battle of Ed War. That was about 27 years ago. We know that during this different points in time, it's like he wanted to get his hands on Captain John's treasure, so he had the map, and then that got lost because of Shanks. Another reason why he's not happy with Shanks. And during the Battle of Ed War, Buggy just wanted to turn tail and run. Roger's like, no, we fight! Buggy, we're dead. Survived, and then of course we know later on when they ended up fighting against the Whitebeard pirates on the one random island and everything, after Odin was part of the Whitebeard pirates for a while, we know that during that time frame, him and Shanks ended up fighting to a degree against Teach, against Blackbeard, who is now currently a Yonko. So yeah, 3 of the 4 Yonko were related in that battle. Well, 3 of the 4 future Yonko were in that battle. Which is just funny, as kids. Whitebeard would go on to be a Yonko. Roger would go on to be the Pirate King for about a year or so. Year and a half, give or take. But we see that and everything, and then, of course, we know that, Odin joined the crew, and we know that Buggy was around during the time frame when they were trying to make their way to Laugh-Tale. We also know that during the time frame right before they were going to go to Laugh-Tale, Buggy became extremely ill. And Shanks and him, stayed behind, at the whatever harbor or, hotel or whatever that they stayed at during that time frame, possibly on Lodestar, since we don't know the exact location of A, Laugh-Tale, B, Lodestar. We don't know if that was where they stayed or if there happened to be another island that was close enough to where Laugh-Tale was, that that's where they stayed. But we know that that Shanks clearly shows how much he cares about Buggy by the fact he's like, no, we'll stay here and I'll keep an eye on Buggy and everything. And Buggy just gets kind of angry, but he's too sick to really do anything about it. And I think secretly it's Buggy trying to be, tough and everything, but, tough in front of Shanks and the rest of the crew. But in actuality, I think Buggy's actually quite thankful that his friends stayed with him and kept in company and everything. Now, whether or not Buggy and Shanks both actually know what was on Laugh-Tale, because it's a possibility that, like, Roger and the rest of the crew, when they got back from Laugh-Tale, they may have told Buggy and Shanks what was there. Just like the fact of, like, it wouldn't surprise me if Odin told Toki what was there, since he wrote parts of it down in his logbook, probably. And then since then, Yamato has read it, and Momo has read it, so they may know. So it's a possibility that Buggy and Shanks, well, Shanks definitely has an idea of what's on that island, either through what he's learned from Roger or through his own means. And of course, Buggy and Shanks were on this ship when Odin would have been translating the coordinates on the road poneglyphs, so it's quite easy for it to be imagined that, like, Buggy and Shanks both actually know, A, the coordinates for how to find Laugh-Tale, B, where Laugh-Tale most likely is. But again, it depends on whether or not Roger and the rest of the crew explained to Buggy and Shanks what was on Laugh-Tale, why they called it Laugh-Tale, and everything like that. And then, of course, Roger disbands the crew and everything, and Roger heads off, and that's where he goes and ends up being with Rouge. And then, of course, we know that during this time frame, Buggy and Shanks end up being at after Roger is captured. Captured / turns himself into the Navy, and then the Navy lies and says, no, we captured the King of the Pirates. He didn't just walk directly into our building and hand himself in. No, that didn't happen at all. We know that Buggy was at Roger's execution. We see how distraught he is seeing his former captain, father figure, be executed. We know that Shanks also had that issue as well. We know that this happened in Logtown, and we know that Buggy and Shanks both had very different reactions to this. Shanks's reaction was, I'm going to go out and I'm going to form my own crew. And that's, of course, and he asks Buggy to join him. Buggy turns him down. You know, Buggy just ends up staying in the East Blue. Buggy's basically answer is, I'm just going to be a big fish in a small pond. Shanks, I'm going to go try to be a big fish in a big pond. And of course, we know during that time frame, eventually he finds Yasopp and Ben Beckman and Lucky Roo and, insert all the other members of the Red Haired Pirates minus Rockstar, because he wasn't a member until Luffy had set out to sea and everything like that. At some point that time, that's when Rockstar becomes a member of Shanks's crew. But for Buggy, during that time frame, he just spends however, the next, 20-some years hanging out in the East Blue. He builds up his crew with Mochi and Kabaji and Richie and, any of the other random members of the Buggy Pirates and everything that are there. And eventually we know that he ends up at Orange Town and takes over that town. And of course, he ends up having the battle with Luffy and Nami and Zoro and everything. And gets kicked in the crotch by Luffy is somewhat how he ends up getting defeated. And then tied up by Nami, having his body tied up by Nami, and then the rest of his head and arms and legs and just head and hands and feet, just get shot off into the ether by Luffy with a Gumbo Gumbo no pistol or whatever it was that he used. And, so we have that moment. The thing that I do kind of want to point out about that is during that initial battle with Buggy, he actually does demonstrate a few things that actually do make him a bit of an interesting opponent. Of course, that his Barabaranomi allows him to have similar, not exact same, but similar things to what Luffy can do, in the fact that he can expand the range of his attacks. With Luffy, of course, you can kind of see to a degree where the punches are coming from, but with Buggy, because of the fact that he can just detach his hands and then, or parts of his arms or whatever, and they can just go off on their own. I guess a little bit similar to Lizardy from My Hero Academia, the one that can disattach parts of her body and they can go off and then she can bring them back together. That's in Class 1B. I really like her. But with Buggy, of course, we see him being able to, detach his upper parts of his body and his hands and everything like that and use them to, stab Zoro from behind, catches Zoro off guard with the fact that he can't really be affected by being cut. We see him be able to do some form of damage to Luffy. We see how angry he gets when he sees Shanks' hat and everything. And, that he stabs it and everything. Okay, so slight caveat here in regards to Buggy. I get that at the time he's much more associated that with being Shanks' hat than being Roger's hat, but still, wouldn't Buggy have known that that was also his captain's hat at one point and that Roger had passed it on to Shanks? I would say that it's possibly, but Buggy's also issues with Shanks may also be a slight grudge against Shanks for the fact that it seemed like their captain, their father figure, seemed to have more, I don't want to say expectation, but more something to do with Shanks being, I guess prodigal son might be the better way of putting it, with, Shanks being the one to carry on more of Roger's will, the will of D. Whether or not Shanks has the actual will of D within, part of his name or whatever is left up for debate, given other information we found out about Shanks with Film Red and everything. But Buggy may have a bit of, contempt for that, but he still stabs the hat. And I'm like, that was your captain's hat. Why are you stabbing it even if you don't like Shanks anymore? And the thing is Shanks has no malice towards Buggy. We see that later on at Marineford. He has no malice towards Buggy. Buggy still hates Shanks. And as I said, I think part of it is more him, his, I was about to say Napoleon complex, but that's just about being short. No, I would say the way that Buggy tends to act towards Shanks is more, Shanks was always the braver one. Not that we don't see Buggy be brave when they're kids when it comes to dealing with the, with the white-bearded pirates and everything like that. I mean, Buggy will still fight to protect himself and Shanks and the rest of the crew. that was never left up for debate, but he would still choose to run rather than fight for the most part in that time frame when he was younger, which I don't blame him. I would probably be the same way. It's like, the White Bear Pirates are coming. Shiki is here. I'm gonna go hide. I'm gonna go hide. I don't know what you're gonna need later, but I'm gonna go hide and start making medicine. Would just be my answer to that. I'll have bandages ready. But, you know, Buggy still gets defeated by Luffy and the others. And then, of course, we know that he goes on his Buggy's mishap adventures where he ends up, of course, finding Gaimon and having that whole fun interaction with Gaimon, which is just funny in of itself. And then eventually he's found by Alvida again. And then, of course, he ends up, you know, they team up and they go and end up being at Log Town, where, of course, he ends up almost executing Luffy in Log Town, but, of course, is saved and everything. And we see this fire seem to get lit in Buggy, and the fact that he is ready to follow Luffy and the Straw Hats into the Grand Line. Now, bear in mind, perspective we get on this later when it comes to Buggy is the fact that the last time he was in the Grand Line was when he was a kid. Was probably just, you know, whenever the Roger Pirates were, like, dropping everybody off somewhere. And somehow Shanks and Roger would have ended up getting into the East Blue at Shanks and Buggy, would have ended up getting into the East Blue at some point in time to be at Log Town for Roger's execution. Also, you'd think Buggy, well, retrospective at the time, we didn't know that Buggy was supposed to have been on Shanks's crew, or been on Roger's crew at this point in time, because that hasn't been revealed to the world yet, or that hasn't been revealed to the reader yet, but we know that that would have been the same execution platform that his captain had been executed on 20-some years earlier, and Buggy's had time to possibly not necessarily get over that, because I still think Buggy probably still misses Roger a lot, and misses Rayleigh and misses Scopper and Crocus and anything else. Also, I want to see a reunion between Buggy and Crocus. I kind of want to see that. I kind of want to see Crocus's reaction to the fact that 2 of their former apprentices are now Yonko. I kind of want to see that reaction, because we haven't really seen much from Clover for a while. We've seen him in, like, the cover pages a little bit, but not too much else, and I do want to see Clover again. Or, excuse me, Crocus again. We're not going to see Clover again, unfortunately, but Crocus we may see again. But what we end up, of course, seeing with Buggy is he gets this fire lit under him, and he follows Luffy into the Grand Line. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that he sees pieces of his captain in Luffy. He knows that Luffy was kind of, you know, marked by Shanks, and the fact that, you know, he's wearing Shanks' straw hat. He knows that Luffy wants to become king of the pirates. He, you know, saw that even, you know, when he's about to be executed, Luffy still smiled the same way that Roger smiled when he was executed. And I think part of that makes Buggy see pieces of Roger and Luffy, and that kind of reminded Shanks, or reminded Buggy what Roger was like a little bit more, because he's missed his captain for about 26, 25 years at this point in time, somewhere in that range. And I think that for Buggy, that helps light the fire in him, and that's why him and Alvida and the rest of the Buggy Pirates follow Luffy into, you know, the Grand Line. We hear nothing about Buggy until they end up after the Jaya arc and everything. That's after, you know, Laboon and all, you know, a bunch of the other islands, and after they end up in the Jaya arc. We know that Buggy and the rest of his crew that have now just been wandering around in the Grand Line for, I don't know, a couple of weeks at this point in time. And hopefully they got themselves a log pose, or else they are out of luck. And we know that they see that Luffy got, like, the 100 million berry bounty, and that just makes Buggy wants to go after him more. And then eventually that's when Ace shows up on the pirate ship, and he ends up seeing Ace, and Buggy actually ends up liking Ace a lot more than he likes Luffy. Again, at that point in time, Buggy has absolutely no idea that Ace is Roger's son. Also, Ace has no idea that Buggy is kind of like a surrogate brother to him in that time frame, because Ace doesn't know that Buggy used to be on Roger's crew. That is not public knowledge. Whether or not Shanks used to be on Roger's crew is left up to be debatable in this regard as public knowledge at this point in time either, because I don't think that gets revealed until Marineford. But, you know, Ace doesn't know that. So it's like this great little simpatico thing that we see there. And of course, we know that Ace has previously met Shanks at some point in time in the past when he got to the Grand Line. But, you know, Buggy and Shanks just have, or Buggy and Ace just have like a nice little party, and then Ace leaves. You know, and you know, just heads off. And then the next time we find out about Buggy, I think we see some bits here and there, is that, you know, during the Amazon Lily arc, Buggy gets captured and everything by the Marines and gets thrown and impelled down while he's trying to find Captain John's treasure, which doesn't go anywhere, and he gets impelled down, and he's in level 1, which is, of course, where we see Luffy and him reunite, and they just end up getting, you know, they end up running around. Of course, Buggy ends up helping Luffy at various points in time throughout this point in time. While they're running through Impel Down, we know that during that time frame, he ends up seeing the armband that Luffy has, that he's like, oh, that'll help me find Captain John's treasure. How that ends up working, I have no idea. Is it like a mini log pose or something like that? I don't know, because he doesn't have the map. Buggy still doesn't have the map for Captain John's treasure. But Luffy's like, yeah, if you help me, you can have this. Here, you can just have it. And he just, like, gives it to him. And Buggy is just like, oh my god, you shouldn't do that! You know, you shouldn't just trust me right away. Why? He's just like, you shouldn't trust me that easily. He's just, like, blown away by Luffy's, you know, just how much Luffy trusts him. I was just like, Luffy just wanted the army because he thought it looked cool back in, you know, Punk Hazard, and he's just like, or not Punk Hazard, different arc, back at, Thriller Bark. And now he's just like, well, I don't really have a reason for this, but if you want it and it'll help you help me, then sure. Here, take it. Which I just love. It's just like another thing for Luffy. And of course, we see through this time frame as they're fighting through all the different layers of Impel Down, the different floors and everything. We see Buggy actually demonstrate his power, the fact that he can pick up a blue gory and throw it. We see him actually demonstrating a fair more of his ability and everything like that. I don't remember if he has a Buggy ball at any point in time during this time frame, but he, you know, we see him doing all of that. We see him eventually end up, they find Galdino and everything, and Galdino ends up helping them. And of course, Buggy and Galdino just end up, you know, working together like a house on fire, which is just great. You know, of course, they end up finding, you know, Bon Clay, you know, Mr. 2 and everything. And then, of course, we know that, you know, Buggy and Mr. 3 end up starting the prison riot that, of course, ends up helping Luffy and the others escape. And during this time frame, I love the fact that it's basically the only reason that Buggy got his hands on the keys is because of Mr. 2, is because of Bon Clay. Then he just like, here, I need these keys to get into this area. I don't need them anymore. I'm going to go help Straw Hat because I need to find Ivankov because he can help Luffy. You just go do whatever the heck you want. And he gives Buggy and Galdino the keys, and they just end up starting a prison riot, which I love. It's just like, if I release all these prisoners, they will technically be indebted to me. Okay. And he just like starts releasing all of the prisoners, and of course Luffy somewhat ends up getting the credit for it, but all of the different prisoners, it's this flip thing, because it's like the only reason they're able to escape is because of technically because of Luffy breaking in and because of Bon Clay using his powers to get the keys in the first place. And then Buggy is the one that kind of ends up getting all of the credit for part of that. In regards to the prisoners, they start seeing Buggy and just like following him and everything. And for Luffy, he gets kind of the credit for the fact that he's the one that like orchestrated this amazing prison escape, which is just funny. Eventually, of course, it ends up being Crocodile and Daz Bones and Jinbei, of course, get, you know, and Ivankov and Inazuma and a bunch of the different people from New Kama land end up, you know, helping with the prison escape and everything. And during, of course, that time frame, eventually, you know, Buggy and the rest of the, you know, all of the different pirates and prisoners that are in this prison end up just looking at Buggy like he is like the second coming of some kind, like the second coming of Christ in their eyes. Don't know exactly how much Christianity is prevalent in the One Piece world, but still, we see that. And Buggy is just, you know, he milks it to the fullest of his extent. And things just line up because Bucky? My Marvel brain kicked on at that point. Sorry. Buggy, you know, he ends up like looking at like the giant gates of justice that are supposed to open that can take them, you know, take them to Marineford. And like he literally pulls up Moses. He has like a stick in his hand, I think, and he like waves it, and it's like the gate opens. And of course, during this time frame, all the prisoners just was just like, "Oh my God, he opened the gate! He's amazing! His powers are wonderful!" And then we find out that, of course, it's Bon Clay pretending to be Magellan has gotten the people to open the gate from inside of Impel Down, and we see this moment where, of course, he is, where we see, Bon Clay's possible last moments. We know he survives because we see him in the cover pages later. He's the new queen of Kamabaka Land, of a new Kama kingdom down in level 5.5 and everything. I really hope he shows back up again at some point. Everybody wants Bon Clay to show back up again. He's great. And yes, Bon Clay for Straw Hat, Bon Clay for Nakama. He deserves it. He's earned it. And I even think Nami would be fine with it. When she finds out that Bon Clay helped with like getting Luffy out of Impel Down, I think she would be perfectly okay with it, even with him being, creepy at times. And flashing the crew as her. But we see the way that the rest of these new pirates or the rest of these prisoners just look at Buggy like he's just like he fell from the heavens, like he is the promised son. And the thing that I point out is within the prodigal son, the actual parable of the prodigal son in this regard would actually be more in regards to Buggy, because he is actually like the one that kind of left left what would be like the family legacy, whereas like Shanks is the son that stayed and carried on like Roger's legacy, as is the son that stayed on the farm and worked for their father, as opposed to Buggy is the one that just like up and left, and then Buggy has like returned eventually. Is kind of where that comparison should actually go. But we see Buggy and the rest of the pirates and Luffy and the rest of the breakout crew and everything just like falling from the sky on their way to Impel, or on their way to Marineford and everything when they arrive there, which is just funny in and of itself. And lyrics in the song, since that's one of the reasons why I did this, are be a fool, play the calf, and you'll always have the last laugh, and you'll rate with all the great swells, and be a clown, make them laugh, just like all this other funny stuff that ends up being the lyrics on the song, just like apply to Buggy. And as you've noticed, I've been putting some of those different lyrics onto the images. And we know Buggy and the rest of the crew, or the rest of the escapees, end up they all land, Luffy all land on Marineford and everything like that during the big battle with the Whitebeard pirates versus the Marines and everything. And we see all of that. And eventually within that setup, we see this moment where, of course, Luffy ends up getting attacked by Mihawk, and Luffy just grabs Buggy and just shoves him in front of Mihawk, and Buggy's the one that gets cut, and then Buggy, he's fine. And then we also see he just kind of shredded by Mihawk, but he's still okay. Admittedly, as I stated, Buggy is immune to slashing and cutting damage. Not immune to blunt force damage, so like hammers and mallets and getting kicked in the groin, those are going to hurt him. Cutting, not going to do any damage to him. Luffy is, of course, the opposite. That's why people tend to compare their devil fruits a lot. And we get this moment where, Buggy, everything happens. Buggy tries to, set up this alliance with Whitebeard. He also ends up like getting a hold of the Den Mushi and being like the one that's like broadcasting it to the world. Broadcasting, like interrupting what's happening, and like broadcasting parts of the Marineford War to the world, which is adorable. There's also a moment where because Aokiji freezes everything, the snail gets frozen at one point in time, and Buggy has to, put it into the water and unfreeze it, and then he pulls it back out. And the snail does not want to do anything, and we have this adorable moment, and it's just funny. And I'm pretty sure this is in the manga, because if it's not, it's just funny that they added it in the anime, where the prisoners are acting as Buggy's film crew with lights and camera, and making sure that Buggy looks good and everything. And several of the prisoners are just looking at the snail, and they're just they give the snail a pep talk about how awesome Buggy is, which is just funny. We see them just looking at they pep talk the snail, and the snail falls for it. Admittedly, the prisoners believe exactly what they're saying in regards to how awesome Buggy is, considering the bits that they've seen about him do in the last several hours, last day-ish or so, with letting them escape from the prison, and then the gate, and getting them out of the prison, and now they're at Marineford. He, kind of stood up / had slight alliance with Whitebeard and everything. And Whitebeard's like, wait a second, I recognize you. Weren't you that weird clown-nosed kid on Roger's crew? And like, a bunch of this other information is getting released about Buggy. And like, they pep talk the snail, and the snail just like ends up falling for it. And I find that so funny for some reason. I know it's meant to be funny, but I still find it so funny. And the snail is just like, yes, I will broadcast it. It starts broadcasting again. And then, of course, we know during this time frame at one point, Buggy has to like carry Jinbei and Luffy at one point in time because they got attacked during this time frame. I think, or was trying to help get them to where Ace is. We see Buggy when what is it? When Whitebeard is killed, and then when Ace is killed, we see Buggy seems to be, he's like crying, but it's because he's terrified, and like, he's crying, but it's because he's scared out of his mind, and I don't blame him. Do not blame him in the slightest. Buggy also ends up, the rest of the prisoners think that he's like, his tears are out of respect for Whitebeard and everything as his like true rival. Admittedly, I do think, to Buggy's credit, I do believe that when it is revealed that Ace is Roger's son, when they do find out about that, I do believe that that gives Buggy a little bit more motivation as to want to try to save Ace, because it's like, oh, he was my former captain's biological son. He is kind of like my surrogate brother, the same way that Shanks is. And, speaking of Shanks, we know that, after everything happens with Ace and Whitebeard dying, we know that during that time frame, that's when Shanks shows up with the Red Force and everything, and they just like, put a stop to the war, and Buggy is just like very angry at Shanks, but he is just like, Shanks is just like, he's not phased at all, and he even like tricks Buggy saying, hey, I'll give you treasure if you take this hat back to Luffy, which he does, and then he gets back and he's just like, where's my treasure? I lied. Damn it! But he ends up, escaping from Marineford with the rest of the prisoners and everything, and, Bon Clay, and Galdino, well, they all end up escaping. We know that during the post-war time frame that eventually they ended up finding the rest of the Buggy's crew with Alvida, and that they were reunited, and she's just like, where did you get all these prisoners from? And he's like explaining everything. And we see them talking, and Buggy's rest of his crew just straight up know that whatever Buggy did is like, no, whatever these prisoners think he actually did is not true, but we will take full advantage of it. And he ends up, revealing to Alvida, well, I got this band that'll help us find Captain John's treasure. And we kind of, for a long time, we kind of thought that maybe that's what they went and did. We find out, of course, that during the 2-year time skip is when Buggy ends up becoming, a warlord, and then he ends up founding, the Buggy's delivery service, which is, these mercenaries that have like a bunch of the giants and everything in it, Hyrudine and his crew and everything are part of that. And then he's a warlord, and he sets up on Kalibali Island and everything, False Bluffs Island and everything. And they set up all of that. And we see him, and that's not revealed until his new, appearance and everything is not revealed until after everything happens in Dressrosa is when that's revealed, and we see him and his crew, and we see, he is now like this big star Buggy underneath the big top at Kalibali Island and everything, and we see all of that, and we see like Alvida and Galdino and Baji and Kabaji and Moji and, Richie and everything. We just see all of that, and we just see how much like all the prisoners who clearly haven't gotten any new clothes. Buggy and his core crew have gotten new clothes, but the rest of the prisoners clearly have not. I'm like, I get that's a distinction in the concept of like, well, we can tell that they're the ones that were the prisoners, but I'm sorry, it's been 2 years. Please get new clothes, people. Please. And all of that. And we know eventually during the, everything with the Grand Fleet that Hyrudine and his crew leave, which just makes Buggy more panicked and everything. And then I am going to throw in a little bit of what happens in Stampede here. I know it's not canon, but it is still funny. We see, of course, Buggy and Galdino and Alvida are like trying to be like security at the place. You know, they got hired to be security for some reason because, yes, sure, trust Buggy with security purposes. And eventually it ends up being, you know, Buggy does getting his hands on the chest that has the log post in it to Laugh-Tale, and he knows what that is. He knows instantly what that is. And, you know, he tries to escape. And then, of course, Bullet shows up and everything. And he, you know, recognizes Bullet because within the context of the movie, Bullet had been on Roger's crew at one point in time. And Buggy knew who he was. And then, of course, we have the moment where Buggy is just kind of there in the background for a while because he tries to, like, hide and, like, has, like, his like blonde haired version, which is just kind of funny. And at one point we know that when there's this big kind of attack that happens on Bullet, that Buggy kind of gets pulled into that attack. When they attack Bullet, and he gets pulled into it somehow, and it doesn't really make much of a difference, but eventually he ends up, you know, he ends up escaping at one point in time and everything. And we see like how much his, you know, his crew of all of these different former prisoners still adore him and everything, which is just funny. During the Wano arc, that's of course when the warlord system is disbanded. And that's, of course, you know, we know that Stainless, Vice Admiral Stainless was sent to deal with Buggy. And during that time frame, it is now revealed to us that that was when Crocodile and Mr. One and Mihawk showed up, and that they ended up intercepting this fleet and stopping them attacking Buggy. And then, of course, via everything with the new Egghead arc and everything, it has been revealed that they show up, they they basically they have, for all intents and purposes, it's very similar to like a mob interrogation, which is just funny, where they have like Buggy's head, and of course he's fine because he can have cutting damage and not have an issue, but he's clearly been beat up as well. Also, at this point in time, we know that Mihawk has hockey, obviously, but also now Crocodile has hockey. Probably so does Das Bones. I would at least like to hope that at this point in time that Buggy has learned hockey. You know, somehow, even before all of this, I would hope that he's learned it. That would be at least a good thing, in my opinion. So some form of, like, him getting stronger. Maybe not too much of the rest of the crew. Maybe Galdino learn hockey. Alvida, I mean, like, she's kind of resistant to some of that types of damage anyway, but if someone comes at her with hockey, I don't know if that would actually make a difference, even with her, you know, smooth, slip, fruit, or whatever. I don't really know about that. That's a different concept. But I would at least like to hope that Buggy has at least attempted to learn hockey to get stronger. That would have been nice. Or maybe now that he's got Buggy, or got, you know, Crocodile and Mihawk, maybe they're just going to force him to learn hockey now to be more of a respectable public figurehead. And Crocodile's just like, you owe me money, clown. And Buggy's like, I don't have any money. Nothing's gone well. All of my giants left, and I don't have money, and we never found Captain John's treasure. And all of this was paid for by the government. All of our contracts dried up. And we just have, you know, the rest of the crew over there at the corner just, like, eating and relaxing. Galdino tries to, like, butter up to Crocodile again, which is just funny. And Buggy is just like, but listen, we have a lot of people here that work for me, and a lot of them are really good at marketing. How do you think we got so big so quickly inside of our mercenary, you know, thing? Motorcycle. And, you know, they're really good at advertising. We got people that do design, we got people that know how to handle media press, all of this stuff. Just use all of that, and please don't kill me. And of course, Buggy just, you know, both Mihawk and Crocodile, like, I think we can work with that. And then, of course, like, all the posters get printed up and everything, and it's like, Buggy looks like he's the one in charge, which just to make Crocodile and Mihawk even angrier. And then Buggy's like, I didn't approve it. They did it without my permission. I'm sorry. Please don't kill me. And Mihawk just basically makes the comment of like, well, if the world thinks that he's the one in charge of the Cross Guild, even though Mihawk's bounty is higher than Buggy's at this point, for most of the time. Even though since the world thinks that he's the one in charge of the Cross Guild, that may actually be helpful to, Crocodile and I. Puts a little bit more, I guess, more of a target on Buggy than on either of them. And they're just like, sure, that's fine. We can work with that. That'll be fine. And then, of course, that's where, of course, revealed that Buggy is, a Yonko and everything. We got that revealed just at the end of Wano and everything. And it's just funny in that regard, and the Cross Guild and all of that. So I really hope we get a little bit of an extra of that in the anime when they do get to that point. A little bit more of like Crocodile and Mihawk just like threatening Buggy. But I did want to go over some of the other lyrics that are in the song just because they're kind of funny. Yeah, I put some of them other ones in here, but still they're funny. Be a clown, all the world loves a clown. You get a bigger hand if you can stand on your head. There's if you become a doctor, folks will treat you with dread. If you become a dentist, they'll be glad when you're dead. Dress in huge baggy pants and you'll ride the road to romance. Just like be all of this, just be a clown and you'll be fine is basically what it goes over. But Jack, you'll never lack if you can quack like a duck. And the song, the version of it that's in the DeLovely movie is just funny in and of itself, and I do highly advise watching it. I put the link in the description. I just highly advise watching it because it is just really funny. Because the concept in the film is that it's Cole Porter in Hollywood talking to a bunch of these, executives and everything, and they're wandering around like the back lot of like MGM Studios, and he starts singing, and the rest of them start singing along with him. So it's like them kind of making fun of themselves and everything. Because it's just like, we're a clown, we bring entertainment to people. And that's kind of what Buggy has done. We'll see where Buggy ends up failing up to next. I mean, he's a Yonko now, so the only place he can fail up to is either King of the Pirates or sitting on the empty throne. Don't really know which one I want to see more. Him being the King of the Pirates for like a short time would just be funny. And then he gets defeated by Luffy, and Luffy's like, nope, mine. That'd be funny. But we'll see what happens with that. I do kind of want to see Shanks and Buggy end up interacting again. Also, given the fact that Uta is now a thing, I do somewhat want to find out what Buggy's opinion of Uta would be. That type of a thing. So that's what we have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you go and listen to the song because it is funny. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And this is going up the day before Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving. Bye.
Listen and be in awe. I am the great, invincible pirate, the legendary Buggy.